1 in 50 Black Americans are actually millionaires.
I don't know any billionaires who don't work.
Right. This is Shannon and Max, and you have tuned into In Our Bag, Winning, Wealth, and Wanderlust podcast. On this episode, we explore financial wealth, what is needed to retire early, the first part of our 5 Types of Wealth series. So, we back on In Our Bag. Max, what's been up with you? How you been?
I'm good. You know, just living, learning, building wealth.
Living and learning. That's what's up. That's good. I mean, who you telling? We done had some crazy situations in weeks, but hey, that is living at its finest. Today we're gonna get into wealth. I'm excited about this topic. We talk so much about wealth, and really that's what one of the pillars of what this podcast is about. But I think there's some misconceptions or maybe some miseducation, maybe we could say, about wealth and what it means. And so we want to dive in a little bit more on wealth, what it means to us. We really want you to tell us what wealth means to you, but we're going to challenge maybe some of your viewpoints on wealth, as we have learned and discovered over time that wealth has actually changed. Our definition of wealth has changed. And so before we get into that, we want you to subscribe, follow, like, and share. And we definitely appreciate you being here, but we're going to go ahead and get into the episode. So Max, what does, when you hear wealth, what does wealth mean to you? How would you define wealth?
Well, you know, the first thing that comes to my mind, of course, when I think of wealth is money and financial. So, you know, as you kind of hinted at before, it's the definition of wealth seems to have evolved, or is a little bit evolving. So even with my definition lately, it's starting to encompass more than just money, more than just financials. What about you?
Yeah, I think I've always seen wealth as something to aspire to have or to gain, just so I can do the things that I want to do.
Okay.
So
yeah.
So for me, wealth is pretty much always been financial based as well. I've always seen wealth that way. I could say, you know, as we're alluding to, our thought process on wealth has changed. And I think it aligns with what we're going to get into as you talk about the different types of wealth. Right. I had never really considered that there are different types of wealth. How about you? Had you ever really thought about wealth in that way?
I mean, a little bit. You know, I did think about being able to kind of have time freedom with wealth. And, you know, that kind of was like, if I had a lot of money, you know, I could maybe not work as hard and, you know, have more time to do things that I wanted to do.
Right.
But that still kind of was tied back into financials, you know, in my opinion, on what wealth was.
Right. And I guess for me, like, I can remember being asked, you know, like a conversation or a question, rather about, you know, if you come to a fork in the road and one leads to wealth, one leads to success, and one leads to health, which one do you choose? I've heard a lot of people choose the wealth track. I've heard a lot of people use, you know, a lot of people choose the success road.
Wait,
but I remember health, right?
Oh,
and
okay.
and like, and then I remember, and I was a teenager then, I remember saying to myself, well, logically I would want health, because I can't really enjoy the others, right? And I didn't realize at that time, and I might have been 17 when that question was posed to a bunch of teenagers. We were all teenagers when that question was asked. I didn't make the correlation about how those individual roadmaps weren't about them individually, how they really tied back to wealth ultimately.
Right.
And so with that being said, the different types of wealth, since we're kind of explaining, our vantage point and how we view wealth, there are different types. But the five that we're going to discuss is financial wealth, social wealth, physical wealth, and mental wealth. We'll talk right now, this particular segment about financial wealth. And so we alluded to this. We talked about financial wealth, and how we've kind of equated it with more so about money. The way I see it is, it's about net worth. Taking your assets minus your liabilities, and you wind up with your net worth. Overall, financial wealth is the most recognizable, as we talked about how we correlate wealth. That's the first thing we talked about. We talked about finances.
Yeah, that's probably the first thing most people think about when you say wealth is
right,
money.
Right. And we've always equated financial wealth with happiness, right? But we know that there have been plenty of people who've amassed financial wealth and aren't necessarily happy. So in many cases, that probably should have told us something, that maybe there's more to wealth than finances, right?
Yeah, that's definitely when you think about it, it's kind of obvious. Like, okay, so it's not just one thing.
Right. But I think, if we're to be honest, we do believe that it is a way or a mechanism to get to happiness, right? To have those finances.
You may not be able to buy, as they say, money can't buy happiness, but you can definitely buy a lot of things that can make you happy in the moment. You know what I mean? Or it helps.
Right. It definitely helps, and it definitely creates an avenue. Having financial assets creates an avenue for us to experience life maybe the way we would like to.
Right.
And some people, people have different motivating factors for why they want to have finances, right? Or why they put more into financial wealth. Right. A lot of people look at it from a retirement standpoint, like, I need to make sure I have financial wealth in order to retire when I want to retire and have enough to retire. Right. Some people look at it from a standpoint of, I want to amass wealth just so I can, as we talked about, have freedom, travel, buy cars, clothes, bags, those things, right? Material things.
Right.
And some people just wanted just to have the freedom, right? Just in general, not to have to punch a clock and work, a 9 to 5 per se, or not the traditional way of working. And so I think it is. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, just one thing that you mentioned earlier when we were talking offline was, you mentioned that people wanted to generate wealth to pass it down to the next generation.
Absolutely. That is another reason to want to achieve financial wealth, right? For generational wealth to pass along
so to kids and kids and kids is okay.
Correct. Okay. And that's not something that's necessarily prevalent in our community, where there's been generational wealth passed on. I do think that the thought process on that is changing for sure. I think people are becoming a little bit more educated in how to do that. Right. And at least the appetite to do it, I think, is present, where I don't believe it was as prevalent for our parents. Right. For sure. But what's interesting though, I was reading, and I think, I can't recall where I saw this recently, but I did go back and do some research. The Washington Post had reported back in 2017, and this recently came up. Like I said, I can't remember what I was watching or listening to. But Washington Post reported that 1 in 50 Black Americans are actually millionaires.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Compared to 1 in 7 white Americans, though, that are millionaires. Right. But I thought it was interesting that 1 in 50, right? I mean, what do you think about that? Because, you know, I think a lot of times the images and the things that are portrayed about Black America are, one, they're not true.
Right.
But I think that wealth gap is closing, even though it's 1 in 50. But, you know, our parents' age group, like our parents are baby boomers,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so this statistic is far from what it was like when they were growing up, right? So what do you think about that statistic specifically as it relates to financial wealth,
It would
or
be
just millionaires in general?
right. Well, I remember when you first told me that, I had like a wave of emotions because I was like, oh, 50 is not as bad as I thought it was. And then when you hear
Right.
like, well, it's 1 in 7 white people, it's like, well, damn, we still are behind in that area. And that seems like a lot of millionaires, in my opinion, because, you want to on a plane normally has, 50 or something people. So I'm like, damn,
Right.
somebody on this plane is a millionaire. I just, when you think about it, like break it down in terms of those numbers, it's more than you actually think. And I'm sure it's people that, that we probably know, Shannon,
Right. Right.
that it has to be, that are millionaires. Like, I don't, so I think those are very interesting numbers. Very interesting numbers.
So when you think about that, right, there are roughly, I think there's 314 million Americans, I think. 314, 315 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. That doesn't seem right. Hold on a second.
No, it's no, because it's
That's
like
billion.
10. Okay, I about to, yeah,
Hold on.
yeah,
Hold on.
because it's
Let's do
300
US
something
pop.
people, like it's.
No, I was right the first time. Okay. So the US population, right, is okay. So 2022 statistic. So the 315 was a 2000, I think it was 2018 statistic. So 332 million Americans.
Okay.
All right. And out of that number, right, 332 million. So now I got to go back and redo my calculation. And I know we doing this right on the spot, but that's fine. All right. There are 13% of the population is Black Americans or African Americans, right? So that's 43.16 million, right? If you take that number and 1 in 50, right?
Wait.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 43 million.
Okay, from 300 million. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
You good with that math?
Yeah, make sure the math is mathing.
You good with that math?
I'm good with the math.
All right. 30% of the population is Black Americans. That's 43 million, 43.16 million.
So 1 in 50.
Yeah. So when you divide that by 50, that's 863,200 millionaires.
Okay. All right. And that was 2017. So I, in my opinion, now it should be more than that.
I would believe it's probably more than that now too.
Yeah.
I would believe that it's probably more than that now too. But that also lets you know if it's 1 in 7 whites that are millionaires, there is still a gap.
Short minute.
So, but I thought that when you look at financial wealth, I thought that was interesting as a way to look at it. Of course, we should compare ourselves to ourselves as it relates to, I'm talking individually as it relates to what our individual goals are, right? Because everybody has different goals when it comes to financial wealth. Right. We all have different goals. And so, I have, for me, specific goals and things that I would like to achieve as it relates to financial wealth.
Is it a number? Is it a number that you are looking to achieve, or is it a, like how do you quantify that in terms of a goal?
So for me, I'm of a, even though I might not look it, I might not look it. I don't look a day over 25. I don't know. That's wishful thinking. But for me, it is a number, right? Okay. So I have taken, and I guess we can get into this. I have taken, because I am one of those people who are looking at financial wealth from a standpoint, well, multifaceted. I'm looking at it to be able to, one, have the freedom to do the things that I want to do, to be creative, much like how we're doing this podcast, right? This does take time, but I also currently still work a job, right? And I also have,
and it takes time. Y'all don't even know.
I also still work a job, right? And I also have some other business ventures and things that I am doing, right? To include also trying to foster relationships, whether that's family, whether that's intimate relationship, whatever, you name it. Time yeah. is we'll get into this, but yeah, so for me, I want my time, right? I strive to have my time. And so for me, being able to have financial goals, those financial goals to me are centered around being able to make enough money to cover my expenses, and to be able to travel, and to be able to, have miscellaneous money and things of that nature. So yes, I have a number, right? Okay. For me, I'm not going to put with that number.
It's a retirement number.
It's a retirement number, but it's also a pre-retirement number, right? Okay. So for me, I think for me, and a lot of times, and I don't know if you want to dive into this now on what the retirement numbers are and how you kind of calculate that from a financial standpoint. If you want to dive into that now, we can.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, let's go ahead and dive into that. And then I'll tell you, since you did pose the question to me, I'll kind of hear how the calculations are, and I'll tell you how I came up with my number.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so there are a couple of different ways to calculate how much you need to retire, and I got some of these from Investopedia, so it's a pretty reliable source. And the number one way to calculate that they say to calculate how much you need for retirement is just to save 10 times your salary. So if you were making $100,000, they say you would need $1 million to retire. With that estimate, you're assuming that you're only going to live off of 80% of your income. So you're going to, live off of 80,000 a year versus the 100,000 that you're living off of now. And then that also assumes that you're going to live for like 20 years after retirement. So after 65, you're going to live to like 85. The other way to calculate how much you need for retirement is the 4% rule. So with that rule, what you would do would take your salary. Let's say you make the same $100,000, you would divide that by 4%, and that would give you 2.5 million. And then that's also assuming like a 4% annual return on your money. It's assuming that you're going to live for 20 to 30 years. The way that I calculated how much I need for retirement was I just kind of did like, I made a list of the expenses that I think I'm going to have after retirement. And I included, food, trips, shelter, blah, 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 blah. I made that list for my monthly expenses, multiplied it by 12, added up any debt I have, like the balance of my mortgage or whatever. And, then I just multiplied the annual number by how many years I think I'm going to live after retirement. So I just did 30, and then I added my expenses to that. So, paying off my parents' mortgage, paying off my mortgage, and, any other debt that I have. And that's how I got the number that I came up with for what I needed to retire. So those are the ways that most people use. I think the number one way from Investopedia was just the 4% rule. And I've seen that, over and over as I was kind of researching this. So how did you come up with your number, Shannon?
Well, first of all, I probably did a combination of both, because you talked about 3 different methods, actually, because you talked about the 2 methods that Investopedia talked about, then you talked about your method. So I did something similar to what you did, with my budget, right? So what my annual budget would be. So that would be, you adding in your expenses, miscellaneous food, all of those things, right? Multiplying by the 12 because by months. So that was my annual number. And most most of these things talking about 10 years, they're looking at if you're retiring at 65 or 67.
Right.
I'm trying to retire much sooner than that.
You're trying to retire at 44.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to push that number as close to the number I'm at right now as possible. But realistically, I've given myself by 50. So because I'm giving myself to by 50, and I don't want to just account for 10 years because I'm going to live beyond 50. I mean, beyond 60. I actually used 40 as my number. With the thought process of, yes, I'm probably only going to use 80% of that annual money. So I still use some of that calculation.
Right.
Because I have other investments and other things outside of what my earned income retirement will be. So I didn't really factor in all the other stuff, but yes. And then I came up with a number.
Okay. So your number is not including like the money that you're going to be getting from your retirement accounts and stuff like that. You have a separate, you're keeping those things separate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I did that too. I didn't include my, my 401k or any of my investments because I don't know. I mean, you could do that, but I'm doing this as, I guess, more of a safety net, for my purposes. Like I want to make sure, because when I'm done, I'm not going back to work. So I want to have well beyond what I think I really need to have.
Yes.
And then that, the money that I could pull from my 401k or whatever would just be,
extra
or exactly.
Yes.
Right. And, really, I would really like to not pull from that as long as I could, to let that continue to grow.
Right.
And just, use this money that I'm saving for retirement, even though that's a retirement account too, but have my own separate retirement account or whatever, accounts or assets or whatever.
Right.
So that's my other question. Are you including, is this your net worth number, or is this your
That's not including my net worth number.
Okay.
So yes, I'm talking about liquid. Yes. Okay. It's not including my net worth number. Now, overall, well, that goes into a whole nother. Yeah, I have not looked at it from a net worth number at all. Okay. And that may be a way to also look at, but yeah, because when you start to look at your net worth, some of those things, some of those assets may not be as liquid as others.
Right.
So I haven't looked at it as a net worth, but I mean, that's something to consider. I haven't looked at it from that aspect. Okay. And I think, of course, I think another thing to do, and I haven't read this anywhere, but for me, I do a review. Like I kind of review my financial goals on a consistent basis. I do it. I'm not saying I do it quarterly or nothing like that, but I do at least look at it every year. And so maybe that's something I could start incorporating, looking at it from a net worth perspective. I just haven't. I haven't looked at, and the reason why it may be good to do it annually is because things change in life, right?
Change, your situations change. Right?
Absolutely. And so, yeah, maybe even when, because let's say, for instance, right now, okay, you have one property, but let's say after you do a couple of reviews, if you haven't gone back and look at your financial goals a couple of years down the line, and now you have multiple properties, right? You got multiple income stream properties, right? Let's say you own several multifamilies, or let's say you own a commercial building, whatever the case may be.
Or you got a side business that's bringing you, $10,000 a month.
Correct. So I think it's good to review your financial goals. You just need to determine what what that frequency is for you.
Right.
But I have changed my goals over time.
Mm-hmm.
I have. And so I try to make a conscious effort to sit down and review them. And maybe I'm not doing it. I'm probably doing it more semi-annually, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
because things change.
Right.
So that's kind of how I tackle it,
Okay.
and yeah, how I've come up with my retirement number. And it's such, I think, growing up, at least for me, growing up as a teenager, and then young adulthood, retirement always seemed like something that was so far off. But the reality is, and I think you mentioned this to me too, kind of like how millennials view things. And shoot, you want to talk about Gen Z? They
Gen Z.
way, yeah,
Yeah,
they like
yeah.
y'all. No, I want a completely different life than what the hell y'all been doing. Um, but yeah,
Right.
so I think because of that, and it's kind of weird. Well, and maybe it's not weird. The way people view life, time, wealth, right? People view it differently, and I think more and more people want to get to a place of freedom and maneuverability and being able to do the things they want to do much sooner.
Yeah.
I think the model of retirement and retirement age and all of that stuff, I just think that traditionally how that's been viewed,
Yeah.
people just nobody wants to wait till they're 65. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to wait till they're 62. I
Right.
don't know many people who want to wait to retire till they're 58. I just
Well, yeah, that's that brings up the other topic that we're kind of going to get into, the fire um method or whatever that's going around, which is financial independence, retire early.
right.
So, that's people, reducing their expenses, aggressively investing, um, and making more money now.
Right.
So, and that's kind of the model that a lot of people are working with right now. It's like, oh, 65, no, I'm gonna spend as little as I can now, make as much money as I can now, invest heavily, and get up out of the workforce as soon as possible. And when they're making their money, they're trying to do businesses that allow them to make passive income,
Right.
or yeah. So, and
Well,
I think that the real quick, the pandemic had a lot to do with people's idea about labor and working, and what we should be doing, because shoot, people are fed up. Like, you know,
we talked about that in the previous episode about people just not wanting to return to work, not wanting to return to traditional work, right?
right,
We can even if we, in having this financial wealth conversation, I mean, you talking about income streams, right? They say that the goal is to get to 7 streams of income,
right,
right? And
right,
so if you can get those streams going or try to achieve as many of them as you possibly can, I think people saying out of the 7, if you can get to 4, you're good, right? Which means that, and in many aspects, like there have been some pockets who have said, hey, you can't totally walk away from earned income, right?
right,
Because earned income is still a stream of wealth. And
right,
I think there are some people who are saying, yeah, I still want earned income. I just want to earn that income the way I would like to earn that income, right? And so when
right,
you look at those income streams, yes, not all of them are passive, because earned
right.
income is definitely not passive. That is an active earning stream.
Hmm.
Um, but there are many people who have said that even in the pursuit of those 7 streams of income, you do need to make sure you keep an earned income. I
Right.
don't know what you think about that.
Um, I think it's different for everybody.
Right.
Everyone has their own goals, and what works for some people may not work for someone else. So I don't think it's any right or wrong.
Right.
Um, you know, for me, um, and yeah, even some things that you think are passive income require
Work.
upfront labor.
Right. Right.
Or
Right.
at some point it's going to be
Right.
labor. I mean, so
Right.
Even things, like this or whatever, it's time that goes into it, that is working time. So,
Right. Right.
you're trading one thing for the other, I mean,
Right.
I don't know any billionaires who don't work.
Right.
And who don't work extremely hard, as a matter of fact. So,
and I think it's a different kind of work too, though, right? If you think about, I mean, we talked about that just a little bit just now, right? There's like what it takes to put together a podcast versus, trying to manage, if you do have a 9 to 5 and then trying to make time for working out and trying to make time. I mean,
yeah.
to be able to, now granted, the more you grow and you're able to kind of build more wealth, the more you can have people on your team, right? So you can get assistants, you can get people to do things, but there's still some intellectual capital that's going into, which is work, right. Which is going to make sure that those things are being set up, or certain things are in place. I think everything's relative.
Well, right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Just one quick point is, when you are, like, let's say, a billionaire, that's one thing. You have the ability to pay everyone to do all of the smaller tasks,
right?
So that you can focus your energy on doing the $1 billion task,
right?
Right. So you're not worried about the the $100 task or the $20 task. And I even tweeted this the other day because I was just thinking about my situation. I'm like, I'm outsourcing everything that's $20 an hour and below. Everything else I'm gonna do on my own. But if it's right. if it's $20, if I can get it done for $20 an hour and less, for me, it's probably worth it to outsource that so I can focus on other things.
Right.
And,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think when we take a look at wealth, right? Financial wealth is what we've been most familiar with, but financial wealth is a lot to unpack. And I do think ultimately it's worth sitting down, looking or develop. If you don't have any financial goals, definitely sit down and think about your financial goals. Think about what it is that you're actually trying to accomplish. And hey, we talked about retirement, but maybe it's something small. Maybe it's something not as broad. Maybe it is, hey, I'm trying to figure out how to buy a home, right?
House, right.
Hey, I'm trying to figure out how to acquire a rental property. Hey, I would like to have a vacation property. Whatever that is, sitting down and trying
money to go on vacation. I mean,
or have
even that small.
Even that small, yes, and that's not small. That's a big deal, right?
Right.
That is a big deal. I think I had told, and not to go down this rabbit hole, but I think I had read something some time ago that 85% of Americans don't have a passport.
Oh yeah, I remember we had that.
Remember we had that. 85%. This is a sidebar, but.
Yeah, that's mind blowing to me. I mean, it kind of makes sense, and we talked about some of the reasons, right? Because in Europe, you go 2 hours and you're in another country. In the right. U.S., you go 2 hours and you're in Kansas or wherever. Right. You know what I'm saying? So we have a lot more landscape to explore, right. Without needing a passport.
Right.
So that's one thing. The other stuff, I don't even really want to get into reasons.
That's cool. We ain't got to go there. We ain't got to go there. But my point is, yes, even if you want to come up with some goals, some financial goals, and how to plan a trip, right? There are things that you can do, so far as financial goals, and trying to achieve those financial goals. But, when you think about financial wealth, all of those things are under that umbrella. Right. And so, we thought it was important to take a little deeper dive. We could go on and on about financial wealth. We really can. As we threw out FIRE, we threw out 7 streams of income. I mean, we can dive into those 7 streams of income, and maybe we'll do that in a later episode. But we just, we really wanted to touch on financial wealth, how we view retirement. Well, because the two of us both have, our financial goal is to get to that retirement, because we're trying to retire sooner than later.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we want to do and want to accomplish. And for us, we need our time back in order to do that. Because, and it's only so many tasks we're gonna be able to get people to do for $20 an hour. So,
right.
Which $20 an hour, by the way, ain't bad. But yeah, so it's only so much we're gonna be able to do. But when thinking about retirement, where would you like to retire? Like, have you thought through that? Like places you would like to retire?
I certainly have,
Okay.
and my list is long. I don't think it would be one place that I would officially settle down.
Okay,
But
let's hear it then.
but
That's
some of the
cool.
places, yeah, but some of the places that I think I would like to retire, and this is in no order, but Tulum, Mexico, that's easy,
Okay.
close, not too far.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Saint Martin is actually my number one place. That's my favorite island that I've been
Okay.
to so far.
Yes.
And
It's also amazing.
yeah. And where else would I go? Tanzania.
Okay.
I haven't been there, but I would like to. And of course, Africa has to be on my list. And maybe like Ghana, they're welcoming people a lot, African Americans specifically, back over there. So that might be somewhere. I think Stevie Wonder moved to Ghana, moved his whole family to Ghana.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, trying to think of somewhere in the U.S. that I would retire, and I can't really think. I mean, Hawaii, but I don't want to be another American. I mean, they're American, but I don't want to be another person coming over there taking up their land. So that's kind of not why that's not really on my list. But I can't think of anywhere stateside. So, what about you?
Okay. Well, I mean, up front, I'm gonna say every place that I travel to, I have a checklist on whether or not I can live there. And it
Okay.
starts, the first question is, can I live here? Right.
Okay.
And I look for specific things, how the culture is, the food, the people, what's the vibe like, both during the day, but at night.
Right.
And not that I go out that much anymore, but I still like to know what the nightlife is like.
Okay.
And then when I talk about culture, what is there to take in, whether it's about the history, what's something that's unique about that specific place. So I have this checklist that I go through. So with that being said, everywhere I've gone, I have run the place through my checklist. Okay. And so internationally for me, if I had to rank places right now, I think I would start with Panama as number one right now. And you know what? I think my list will shuffle. It'll continue to shuffle.
Yeah, you had Panama on your list before we even went there. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So. Well, there are a lot of people who have moved to Panama from America. I mean, at one point, Panama was also, much like how you talked about Ghana is inviting people to come. Panama had all of these programs, and they still do, for what they call expats or expatriates. Right. From America. And, because the cost of living is low.
Immigrants.
Because the cost of living is low, they're really offering
the dollar.
Yes, and they take the dollar, right? So it's easily transferable, from exchange rate purposes. And they have all these programs, as long as you have X amount of money, a certain amount of, and I'm sorry, I guess I could have looked that up, but it's a very low threshold of money. As long as they know that you have some form of retirement money coming in, you really have no problems. I mean, even to the point where they'll allow you to open businesses and things like that. So it's very expat friendly, I should say, for Americans to move to Panama. And that's not just Black Americans, that's Americans, period. And so that was why it was on my list of places to go before we went. so that I could run it through my internal checklist. So yeah, Panama. This is a toss up, man. I like St. Martin. I really do. Like, I really, really, really like St. Martin. I love the fact of what you can get on the Dutch side versus the French side. And I also
Man,
love the
that's
fact.
my favorite place.
Right. Right. And I also like really, really, really love the fact that you can get to other smaller islands from St. Martin.
Right.
You know, I love Anguilla. I think it's the best kept secret on the planet. I'm not that hot on St. Bart's. That's a whole nother topic. It's an overrated island to me.
Yeah.
But
and it's
but
other
yeah,
places you can get to from St. Martin too. I'm not exactly sure, but and they may be a further boat ride. You know, like those two that you mentioned are under an hour. But I think like in 3 hours or so, you can get to other islands, and I can't name them now.
yeah, I don't remember the other ones, but you are
It might
correct.
be Saint either Martinique or Dominicana, something like that. It's something, or Saint Lucia, not Saint Lucia because that's all the way over there, but it might be Dominicana. I know it's two other islands you can get to from Saint Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I absolutely love St. Martin. Like I said, and you get a different feel from each side, and I love that. I mean, but it is isolated, right? And so, but still, I could see myself retiring there with no problem. And
they got those French speaking Black women. Yes.
That part. So don't get me to remembering that part. Another place, which, because also on my checklist, typically places that I love and enjoy are typically beach, sunny, near water. That's kind of my vibe. But there's one that doesn't fit that for me, and that's Amsterdam. Like, if it wasn't so cold, I don't know, maybe I could make it so that I can live somewhere half of the year and another place a half of a year. If I could choose that, I think I would add Amsterdam to my list.
Okay.
I absolutely felt it checked all my blocks except for, well, there's plenty of water because they have canals, which I love the canals. But the beach and the sun, it doesn't have that vibe. But it is a whole. So that's my international places. Stateside. So much like you talked about Hawaii, which is not, you know, as we would say, continental U.S. or, you know, mainland U.S. My favorite place is Puerto Rico.
Okay.
For sure. For all of the things. I love Puerto Rico. At one point, I used to go there at least twice a year. So it was at some point like my second home. I speak enough Spanish to get by. Enough. I don't know. But if I was immersed, I'm sure I would speak more. And if it was truly mainland, I think it would be San Diego. It too.
I love San Diego.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it checks all my blocks, like every block. And so
I don't know. Well, for me, one thing that's on my list is Black people. So if San Diego don't really have enough Black people for me, but you have Amsterdam on your list, so clearly, you know, you ain't really worried about.
There was a few Black people in Amsterdam. It was a few.
Yeah, but San Diego was like really, really, really predominantly white, which is a little bit. I mean, it's cool, but I had a ball in San Diego. I love it. The views, I mean, it's perfect. The weather is perfect all the time. The food is good. Yeah, so I could see why that was on your list.
Sure. I remember being in San Diego in the middle of December.
Yeah.
And all I had on was a hoodie.
Yeah.
And I was perfectly fine.
It's perfect all year round. The weather is perfect.
Yep.
Like, yeah.
Yep. Like for sure.
Like when I went recently, they were complaining because it was cold, but I don't know. It was like 75 degrees. Right. You know, when did I go? I don't know what month I went. Whatever month it was. September, maybe? I don't know. August? But it was cold for that month. So they was like, this is cold. I'm like, shit. This is good. So.
Yeah, San Diego is definitely
Yeah.
on the list.
Okay.
And I was actually going to make that happen maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago. I was really looking to relocate to San Diego because
Well, if that's on your list, you're gonna have to definitely redo your expenses because
yeah,
it's beautiful.
that annual financial or semi-annual financial review I was talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
you're
gonna
gonna have
need.
to maybe triple them numbers because San Diego is expensive as shit. I mean, it's beautiful though. I love it. I can definitely see why. But yeah, it is like the opposite of what did you have on there? Like Porter. Well, no, opposite of my list, like Tulum and San Diego. It's like yeah, way different. So
Well, and it's completely opposite than Panama
yeah, in Panama too. Right.
because Panama is cheap.
Yeah, Panama is cheap. But shoot, we need to get it
Interestingly,
popping. You need to go ahead and move there so I can come visit. I'd love to come
it
see you in Panama.
interestingly enough, we didn't choose Thailand.
Yeah, I don't know if we know we had a ball. And that actually is one thing is on the list of top places for African Americans to retire or move to
Right,
is
right,
Thailand. And I wouldn't
right,
say that I wouldn't. It's just probably not in my top. Like I wouldn't mind having a property there and going, but
right.
I love Thailand. I had a ball. I mean, in Phuket and Bangkok. I mean, I had a ball.
Don't forget
Probably
about
had
Pattaya.
well, Pattaya probably was the biggest ball that we had. Like
but
that
but
was
the
the
reason
randomest good time ever, man.
right, but the reason why I say that is because it's a tropical climate.
Yeah,
We both like good weather. It's
yeah,
near water. It's cultured. The only difference is
the language
native
barrier.
black people, but there are
Uh,
tons of black people that
oh yeah,
come
and
through there.
I think the challenge for me would be the language barrier. Even though we didn't really have like everyone, most people did speak English, but it seemed to me like Thai is a difficult language to learn. So.
I was actually surprised how many people actually speak English. I mean,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah. We didn't
with
have any communication issues.
no at all.
Yeah.
Like at all. I mean, and we did try to, for the most part, we gave them a greeting or did say
Right.
something in Thai,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Just
but they knew we were
trying
black, so they just said hello.
we could have been black Thai. I mean,
Well, yeah,
there's black Japanese,
that's true.
Hello, Rui Machida. I mean, or Rui, not Rui Machida. Damn. Rui Machida is all Japanese. But anyway, I should have said Naomi Osaka is what I should have said.
Right.
But,
right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just interesting. It's interesting that we had a blast. I mean, granted, it's damn near all the way on the other side of the world, but I'm just surprised that we didn't have Thailand in either of our top 3. So
yeah, I mean, it's probably in the top 5 or
interesting.
It's definitely in the top 10, but it's not the top 3.